SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Though requested for review by ministers, last week French senators approved tax hikes to be implemented across all gambling disciplines as part of the budget 2025. France will introduce a new tax threshold on the GGR for lotteries, sports betting and online gambling, with real tax income charges on gambling operators nearing 60%. How will Michel Barnier's new tax plan impact the unique structure of French gambling following the transformative changes of 2024? Furthermore, iGaming Daily examines ongoing developments regarding the French government's consultation on launching an iCasino market and its efforts to address concerns of entrenched stakeholders about the terms of play of online casino. And before we get started, here's a message from our sponsor. iGaming Daily is sponsored by Optimove, the #1 CRM and marketing solution for the global gaming industry. I'm Ted Menmuir, and joining me today, SBC's French correspondent, Jake Pollard. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Ted. Good to be here as well.
So, again, another week of changing developments in France. How are you kind of observing developments on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, lots of stuff going on. Obviously, last week was the annual conference of the AFGL, the online gaming operators trade body, which is really quite enriching in terms of discussions and debates. And on top of that, there are also the budget talks and obviously the government's plans to raise taxes across the board on certain operators and certain verticals, which as you can imagine is making quite a few companies unhappy.
So, okay, lots of movements. So let's focus on these tax increases. And what are the kind of the key components of the tax plan for the French government and where they're being applied to?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, as we've reported on SBC for some time now, the tax rises are part of the government's efforts, one, to reduce its debt, but also to boost its social security budget. So they're looking to raise around 500 million euros. And within that, they're going to raise taxes on casinos, on lottery, on sports betting, online sports betting and retail sports betting activities. They were also going to raise taxes on horse racing, pari-mutuel activities, but they rescinded that one and they've abolished it basically following protests by MPs, by operators, by a number of stakeholders from that vertical. So those are the kind of key components of the tax plan.
And this was kind of fast-tracked by the Senate above kind of the minister's decision, right? So what was the reaction to that?
I mean, as you can imagine, it's been very negative. I mean, what French companies are saying, and especially, some of the bosses of the companies are saying, is that they are already paying, the highest taxes in Europe when it comes to gambling taxes. So, in terms of online sports betting, I mean, again, as we reported in SBC, on average, it works out roughly at the moment at 55% of GGR. These new taxes will bring it up to around 60% of GGR, which, as far as I'm aware, is by some distance the highest taxes on online sports betting operators. But equally, that level of tax also applies to casino operators, and these are only land-based casino operators who are being taxed in France at the moment. And they say they have much broader cost base than say online operators. So across the board, it really it's impacting different verticals, and again, the bosses of these companies are saying it's going to put employment, jobs in danger. It's going to make it more difficult to compete, but also make the country more difficult to attract potentially international investors maybe, or international operators.
Okay, so back to the industry reaction. I mean, how do kind of French stakeholders engage with the government in terms of its representation and kind of putting their point of view across on tax and regulation with the government?
I mean, it really goes through, trade bodies, or lobby groups, if you want to call them that, but really trade bodies, speaking to MPs, speaking to ministers in charge, speaking to the ministries, in this case, the budget ministry, which is responsible for the overall 2025 budget. So it's really political representations, made to politicians, trying to put, the case forward for their specific vertical, whether it's casinos, lotteries, or sports betting. The good thing, I mean, there are a couple of, points of interest here. Is the good thing is the government generally has shown an openness to debating and discussing these topics. Whereas, for example, just to give you the example of online casino regulation, which I'm sure we'll discuss shortly, the previous administration wouldn't even acknowledge the various stakeholders, whether it's the land-based casinos, whether it's some of the online guys. So at least from that point of view, that's a positive. At the same time, it has also shown some flexibility. For example, it has withdrawn the planned tax increase on horse racing operators. But of course, what that means is that other verticals are saying, well, hang on, if you're doing that for horse racing, why not do it for other verticals? So, the government is in, it has to find a balance because it has to raise some revenues like all governments have to do at the moment, but also trying to not make people too dissatisfied across the board, and also point the finger and say, well, hang on, why is this guy getting a tax, or keeping the same tax levels and you're raising ours? So those are the kind of general kind of issues the government has to deal with. Politically, just to finish on the politics of it, it's also quite a delicate time for France at the moment because it's not inconceivable that there could be a motion of confidence in a vote of confidence put forward in the government. And, if it were to lose that, Macron would have to find a new cabinet to have to, establish a new government. So, it's really, things are very delicate from a political point of view in France. And Barnier is trying to spin all those plates in the air while passing a key budget at a time where, French people are dissatisfied. The economy is not doing great, like many in the Eurozone. And, so all in all, it's a very delicate situation. And then from our point of view, from the iGaming point of view, there's obviously, online casino, which is a huge deal.
And the budget 2025, it's fixed. It's going to be passed through. There's no chance of a revision, is there?
I mean, there could be amendments within, say, for in relation to the gambling sector, there could be amendments to, it's not inconceivable that they might reduce the tax raise somewhat on online betting operators, for example. But as it is, those tax measures are likely to go through. However, the budget itself, there's no guarantee that it will pass. So if it doesn't pass, that's when you get the vote of confidence, the motion of confidence in the government, and potentially the government can fall and the president has to establish a new cabinet. So, quite serious issues, really, overall, beyond purely gambling, quite politically, quite big issues are at play at the moment. But yeah, it maybe it's 60-40 that it will go through, but no one can say for sure, whether it will go through or what's going to happen in the next few months.
You've just come back from the Avgel conference, and how are kind of French stakeholders kind of observing these political plays? Because to some extent there is progress in France towards gaining resolutions. And also they've got, one of the things we witnessed in the market is that the ANJ is one of kind of the more progressive regulatory bodies. So it seems that in one sense, France is progressing, but in other aspects, it's regressing. So how do the stakeholders view what's going on at play?
It's fascinating, really, because, as you say, it's, it's kind of, there's potentially this momentous change, which is, online casino regulation could very well happen in the next 12 months. But at the same time, there are big currents all trying to pull in their own direction. So whether it's the land-based casinos, who want to protect, who feel they have to protect their activity and fear cannibalization, losing businesses to online operators, even lots of the smaller casinos closing down because they believe maybe there'll be so many people going online that their land-based venues won't be able to survive. So there's those ones. There's obviously the online operators who would love to see, a completely open environment in terms of, i.e., anyone who is eligible, who passes the compliance requirements, can apply for a license. So that would make for a very competitive open market, which, for the industry would be a good thing, for suppliers, for operators. You could argue for consumers as well. They'll have more choice. They'll have more variety. And then I guess the last major influence on all this is Française des Jeux, the lottery operator, and obviously newly crowned owner of Kindred Group, and, number 3 operator online in France after Winamax and Betclic. So they have a very particular position in France because, when the Kindred deal was closed, or even when it was announced nearly a year ago, everyone said, they're doing it, one, to get a big pan-European operator, but also preparing for potential regulation of online casino in their home market. Unibet is a very well-known brand in France. And then, they could have Unibet Casino, they could have 32 Red Casino, they could have Maria Casino, all active potentially in France. But in the last few weeks, what's transpired is essentially FDJ are saying they're opposed to online casino regulation, which, has left quite a few people scratching their heads. And the reasons for those are, obviously FDJ can't really say that, but they have this unique position in that they operate these games, these instant games and scratch card games. And some of those games are essentially, they're very similar to online slots, but the only big difference, as I've written in a piece recently, is the payout ratio, which is between 65-70% compared to most online slots, as you know, in our industry, which are around 96-97% payout ratios. So you can imagine, you can see the difference in margins and the difference that would generate for FDJ in terms of revenues. And FDJ, that obviously they can't say this out loud, but many people believe they're just saying we want to protect that market and we don't want to have to compete against, loads of online casinos, fighting for CPA, having to advertise, having to do all this.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
But hang on, doesn't FDJ's opposition just highlight, yes, it is protectionist, but also doesn't it put them at the forefront of a French gambling market that is severely exposed to the black market, to black market actors with anything between $1 billion and 1.5 billion exposure? And
Absolutely.
Doesn't that put them in direct conflict of they are, a part of the problem now by taking this protectionist?
Completely. And it's purely really, of course they wouldn't say it out loud, but everyone I've spoken to about this are saying, FDJ just want to keep the market to themselves. And, if I was in their position, maybe I'd do the same, it's kind of, they're making, I don't know. It's hard to know because they don't break out the figures, but last H1 24, they made $1 billion in lottery revenues, including online instant games. And a lot of that growth came from, and they said it themselves, it came from online instant games. So digital penetration has gone up to, I can't remember, something like nearly 17% compared to 12% last year. So they're clearly, generating a fair amounts of revenues from those games. The other question, and I asked them this for a piece I did recently, I said, how would you address the illegal market then? If you don't want it to regulate, how will you address, they didn't answer me. So yeah, there are serious questions to, for them to address. But, they are a very particular company in the sense that they generate so much revenue for the state that it puts them really, there's no one really comparable in the market, in France. So, what they say does hold sway, but, I think the stakeholders are thinking, the government will look at the various aspects of competition, of trying to have a kind of open market that's competitive, that's open to companies that can truly compete on offer, customer service, that kind of thing. And hopefully they'll legislate for a scenario that allows that competition to flourish.
But is this just part of the bargaining at the initial stage of, yes, France will implement iGaming laws, but we're trying to, are these just the power plays of FDJ at this initial stage where it wants to kind of impose itself on the negotiations of the of iCasino for 2025?
Absolutely. It's totally that. It's exactly that. It's set out the stall, reinforce the messaging, as well as plan for all eventualities, obviously. So maybe, let's if we look at the scenario now, so at the moment they're kind of opposed to it, basically. That's their messaging. And then, let's say the first 3 months of the working groups next year, from January to March or whenever that is, will be whether to regulate online casino in France. So let's say they agree to regulate it. The next 3 months the next quarter after that will be what will be the details, what will be the levels of competition. Do you need to have, I don't know, a land-based presence in the country? Do you need to own a land-based casino, i.e. a similar model to what's happening in Belgium or in the US in some states? All those details of the modalities or the different kind of legal compliance regulatory details will be hashed out during that second quarter. And if that's, if we get to that stage, that's when FDJ will even more put the pressure on the various, whether it's the government agencies and other stakeholders. And everyone will try and get their, the best potential scenario for their vertical.
So FDJ side, coming into the first phase of the consultation, are you seeing kind of entrenched camps, not only from FDJ, but from the municipal casinos, France's online gambling sector, of how iCasino laws should be determined and interpreted?
It's not so much entrenched as they have their own vision for how it should be regulated. So, for example, as we've mentioned before, the French casinos believe they should have an exclusivity period of, say, 3 to 5 years, where online casinos could only operate in partnership with their members. So, you would have to have a partnership with, I don't know, let's say Joie Group and some of their casinos to be able to get an online license. That raises various issues, especially for the much smaller independent ones that might have 1 or 2 establishments. How do they get a slice of the pie? All those kind of details would have to be worked out. So there's that. You've got then Afshell, the online guys. They would want, what we have, say, in the UK. So, you want to open a casino, put a license application through, establish all whether it's a data vault and fund securities and KYC measures, show that you will be compliant. And you can get yourself a license and operate. And then you have the FDJ model at the moment, which seems to be opposed to any regulatory scenarios. So what will happen? It's impossible to tell. But yeah, those are the kind of, entrenched views, or I wouldn't say they're entrenched, but those are the kind of scenarios people would want. But I'd say overall, from what I've seen anyway, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, but they all seem to have a good relationship between each other. Some parties sometimes.
You said it.
There's quite a bit of need or, yeah. No, but yeah, exactly. Famous last words. But sometimes there's a bit of needle between the different stakeholders. And so far from what I've seen, they seem to be fairly civil to each other. So, maybe behind the scenes is different. I don't know, but that's what I've seen anyway.
So back to kind of the market conditions, iCasino will be a huge market in France, but if you're a French operator, what really are kind of what is left of that market? What are the real kind of growth drivers? Because if they're going to start taxing sports betting at 60%, where is there left to grow your customer base?
Yeah, it's a good question. There is still, I think online sports betting has shown that, even within a tough, highly taxed environment, it can still grow. Having said that, it's important to recognize that, essentially, if you're not part of the top 3 or 4, it's very difficult. As someone said to me recently, you either have to be very small or a startup, or very big, i.e. a BetClick or Winamax, to kind of be able to get anything out of the market. Anyone in the middle tends to find it very difficult. In terms of online casino, I think what the authorities would say is, if it is taxed at 60% of GGR or whatever, or those kinds of levels, they'll say, casinos is big margins, and you can generate margins. And if you can't run a casino, you shouldn't be, ask Donald Trump, you shouldn't be in business. So it's that kind of scenario, I'd say. The thing is, you look at a lot of other, let's say, jurisdictions with fairly high taxes. You look at New York in the States, online sports betting is 50%. People still want to be there because these are big markets. And France is a big market. You're talking 65 million people. It's got a big history of casino as well. It's got the most casinos, land-based casinos in Europe. It's always been big on the lottery. So France is a country that likes gaming. The tax rates are, scary. They give you palpitations in some cases, but it's still a big market, and people are still going to come to it because, it's worth, if you can run your business properly, you will make money out of it.
So how positive are you that there can be kind of resolutions and that pathway can be laid out towards launching a market?
Oh, God. I'm always trying to hedge my bets. Putting me on the spot. I'd say I would say roughly, I'd put it at 60-40 in favor of it at the moment. I'm slightly higher because there is a will to do it. There is a will from everyone, I would say, from the online guys, obviously, but even the casinos. If there was no regulation, the land-based casinos would not suffer, so to speak, but they still would, because the illegal market is so huge in France. People say 1.5 to 2 billion euros. It's way more than that. I reckon most people reckon it's 2.5, 3 billion more like. So, already that's a major, major illegal market, and it's only getting bigger. To be perfectly honest, there's no, and you're talking, and that's without even including crypto, crash games, bonus buy slots, all those kinds of, features that are coming up more and more. So there's that. And so everyone, and I say, for my money, don't put words into their mouth, but I would say the regulator would like to see this, put it this way. A regulated market would enable the regulator to do its job properly, whereas at the moment it's fighting constant rearguard actions of trying to ban such and such illegal operator. And you know what it's like, illegal operators just spring up next day with a different site. I'd say the will is definitely there. So I'd say 70-30. The reality is probably more closer to 60-40.
Okay. And Jake, just to wrap up, with your journal hat on, how should kind of audiences be following French developments in 2025? What should they be looking out for? And what are kind of your nuggets for next year?
Okay. In terms of obviously the French market, follow them on SBC and Gaming & Co, the two leading sources for the market. I think the key issues will be tax levels, that the government implements as part of its social security budgets, obviously online casino regulation, key issues, size and scope of the illegal market. And when I say illegal, obviously I'm talking about online casino, but also online sports betting is actually not as big as online casino, but it's quite a sizable market. So whether it's crypto, whether it's, or just bookies, or, like similar to what we've seen with stories in the UK at the moment, like Telegram, who do all their communications with players via Telegram, those kinds of things. That's still a sizable chunk of the market as well in France. And my nuggets, I would say, I would say look out for some typically French convoluted regulatory scenario where they allow land-based casinos to operate and online operators to operate online casino, but in some kind of convoluted deal where there has to be either a partnership or some revenue share or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of, cut the pair, find some halfway house.
You'll be writing that one up. Okay.
Exactly. I'll try and make sense
fantastic.
Of it. All right. Thanks a lot, Ted, mate.
Amazing correspondence from France. Okay, this has been iGaming Daily. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.